Right now, as I speak to you, there is a small wooden shed standing at the far corner of my garden here in Okinawa. It holds my tools, my seed, my old fishing nets. It has stood in that same spot for 35 years. Through the wettest rains on earth and typhoons that flatten weaker things. And this morning when I pressed my thumb hard against the wood at its very base, down where it meets the ground, the wood was firm and dry and sound. Now my neighbor built his shed the same year as mine, from the same lumber, by the same hands. His floor gave way beneath his foot 2 winters ago. The whole bottom had turned soft and black and crumbling, eaten from below where he could not see it. The difference between my shed and his cost me less than the price of a cup of coffee. Come closer, my friend. Let me show you. My name is Kenji Takara. I am from Okinawa, a small island in the south of Japan, where it rains as it rains almost nowhere else, and where wood that touches the wet ground does not last a decade. My family has built and repaired the wooden structures of our home for 4 generations, and my grandfather, who was a carpenter, taught me one law above all others. Wood does not fear the rain from above. Wood fears the water that climbs from below. We live here by one word, and I want you to carry it with you today. Matenai. It means waste nothing, not the wood, not the years of a thing built to last, not the money you spent to raise it. Today I will show you a fix so simple and so cheap that it will add 10, 20, even 30 years to any shed you own. And that, my friend, is the real question. Why does no one at the store ever tell you this? Let me tell you about the enemy. Walk into any home store in America or open any catalog and look at how they sell you a shed. They sell it as a thing you buy and buy again. The wooden shed, they know, will rot from the bottom in 8 or 10 years if placed as most people place it, straight onto the bare ground or a slab. And when it rots, they do not sell you the $5 fix. They sell you a whole new shed, $600, $1,000, $2,000. Or they sell you the pressure-treated boards and the sealants and the chemical coatings, can after can, to slow a problem they could have taught you to prevent for almost nothing. A shed that lasts 40 years is a shed they only sell you once. That is not good business for them, my friend. For a family on a fixed income, that lost shed is a small fortune, spent again and again across a lifetime. My grandfather would have shaken his head. They sell you the cure, he said, because they will not teach you the prevention. Quick word before I begin, and I won't bring it up again. Everything I share here, there's far more of it than fits in one video. So I gathered it all into one book, the Takara Method. And right now I'm keeping it at a special price, lower than it'll normally be. The link's in the description, or point your phone at the code on screen. That's all. Now let me show you today's. Now, before I show you the fix, I must warn you about the mistake that nearly everyone makes, because if you do not understand this, the fix will make no sense to you, and you will not bother to do it. The mistake is this. People believe their shed rots from the rain falling on it from above, from the roof and the walls. So they paint the walls, they seal the roof, they fuss over the top of the shed where they can see it. But the walls and the roof are almost never where a shed dies. A shed dies from below, from the floor and the bottom few inches of the walls, in the place you never look. And it is not the rain that kills it there. It is the ground itself. Water lives in the soil and in the concrete slab, always, even when the surface looks dry. And when a wooden board sits flat against that damp ground or that slab, the wood drinks the moisture straight up into itself, the way the corner of a paper towel pulls up a spill. We call this wicking. The wood is thirsty, and the ground is wet, and the wood drinks and drinks day and night, year after year, and stays forever damp in that hidden place where no air ever reaches to dry it. And damp wood, in the dark with no air, is a feast for rot and for termites. That is how a shed dies, not from the storm above, from the slow, silent drink below. So the whole secret, the entire fix, is this. You must stop the wood from drinking. You must break the contact between the wood and the wet ground. And you do that in two ways. And the first one is so simple, it will make you laugh. You lift the wood off the ground. You raise it, even a little, so that air can pass beneath it, because wood that can dry does not rot. If your shed sits directly on the soil or flat on a slab, the fix begins by getting the bottom of that wood up and away from the wet. And the humblest, cheapest way to do this, the way my grandfather taught me, uses nothing but a few flat stones or a handful of simple concrete blocks. But there is a right way to place them, and a wrong way that does more harm than good. And this is where nearly everyone fails, because it is not enough to simply lift the wood. You must lift it, and you must place one specific thing between the stone and the wood, or the water will find its way up through the stone itself, and you will have solved nothing at all. My grandfather never once forgot this one thing, and it costs almost nothing. Let me show you exactly what it is, because this is where the real secret begins. It is a barrier, a thin layer of something the water cannot climb through, placed between the stone or the block and the wood that rests upon it. Because here is what my grandfather understood, that most people never learn. Stone and concrete drink water too. They are not thirsty like wood, but they are porous, and moisture passes up through them slowly, so that if you set your wooden beam directly upon a stone that touches the wet ground, the water simply travels up through the stone and into the wood, and you have lifted the wood for nothing. The lift alone is only half the fix. The barrier is the other half, and the barrier can be the simplest, cheapest thing. A scrap of thick rubber, cut from an old tire or an old bicycle inner tube, a square of heavy plastic sheeting, a piece of roofing felt, that black tar paper sold in a great roll for a few dollars, even a flat rubber paver. Any of these, laid between the stone and the wood, breaks the chain, and the water can climb no farther. This, my friend, is the $5 fix. A few blocks or stones you may already have, and a scrap of rubber or a strip of tar paper. That is all it takes to stop your shed from rotting from below. Now let me give you the full method, in order, step by step, so you can do this yourself, whether your shed is new and you wish to protect it, or old and you wish to save it. If your shed is not yet built, or you are placing a new one, this is how you set it, so it will outlive you. First, do not set it on the bare soil. Never on the bare soil. Instead, mark where the corners and the long floor beams, what we call the skids or runners, will rest. At each of these points, place a solid concrete block or a flat, sturdy stone. Space them along the runners every few feet so the floor does not sag. Second, level them carefully with a spirit level, adding or removing a little gravel beneath each one, because a floor that sits level will shed water and will not pool it. Third, and this is the step no one must skip, lay your moisture barrier on top of each block, a square of tar paper or thick rubber, before you set the wooden runner down upon it. Now the wood rests on the barrier. The barrier rests on the block. The block lifts everything up into the moving air, and the water can climb no farther than the barrier. Your shed now floats a few inches above the wet world, dry and breathing. But most of you already have a shed, and it is already sitting on the ground or on a slab, and you are wondering if it is too late. It is not too late, my friend, so long as the rot has not yet taken hold. Here is how you save the shed you already own. Step 1. Look beneath it and understand it. Kneel down and inspect the bottom of the shed all the way around. Press your thumb or the tip of a screwdriver into the wood at the very base, at the floor edge, and the bottom of the walls. If the wood is firm and the screwdriver will not push in, that wood is still sound and worth saving. If the screwdriver sinks in soft, that piece has already begun to rot and may need to be cut out and replaced. But even so, the fix below will stop the rot from spreading to the rest. Step 2. If your shed sits on bare soil, your task is to lift it and to dry the ground beneath it. This is heavier work, and you may need a strong helper or a simple jack, but it is worth a lifetime of the shed. Raise one side of the shed just enough to slip your blocks and your barrier beneath the runners, one section at a time, then lower it gently onto them. Now the shed sits up off the earth. If the ground beneath tends to stay wet, spread a layer of gravel under the shed, 3 or 4 inches deep, for a few dollars a bag. Gravel does not hold water against the wood the way soil does. It lets the water drain away and the air move through. Step 3. If your shed sits on a concrete slab, understand that the slab itself is wicking moisture up into your walls. The concrete pulls water from the earth beneath it and holds it, and your bottom wall plate, sitting flat on that damp concrete, drinks it in. The fix here is the same principle. If you can, raise the bottom wall plate and slip a barrier, a strip of that tar paper, or a special sill gasket sold for a few dollars a roll, between the concrete and the wood. If the walls cannot be lifted, then at the very least, seal the seam where the wood meets the concrete, and keep water from ever pooling against that seam from outside. Step 4, and here we return to the wisdom I gave you in another lesson, the wisdom of fire. For the ends of any wooden post or runner that must sit low, near the damp, my grandfather did one more thing. He charred them. This is yakisugi, the old Japanese art of burning the wood's surface black with a flame. That thin, charred layer resists water and turns away the insects that eat damp wood. A propane torch, $20, and it lasts for years. Pass slowly over the bottom ends of your runners before you set them down. Adds still another decade of life. And if you do not wish to use fire, a brush of pure boiled linseed oil on those bottom edges, $10 a can, will help the wood shed water in the same spirit. So there is the whole method. Lift the wood off the ground with blocks or stone. Place a barrier of tar paper or rubber between the block and the wood so no water can climb. Add gravel beneath to drain the ground. Char or oil the low, damp-facing edges. For a new shed, perhaps $10 or $15 in materials. For saving an old one, perhaps $20 or $30, and an afternoon of honest work. And what does it save you? It saves you the shed. A wooden shed replaced is $600, $1,000, $2,000. This fix, done once, adds 20 or 30 years to its life. That is not a small saving, my friend. That is the price of a new shed, kept in your pocket, for the cost of a cup of coffee and a Saturday morning. Now let me give you the extra layers. The things most people overlook entirely that make the difference between a shed that merely survives and a shed that outlasts the one who built it. The first thing overlooked is the water that comes from around the shed, not just beneath it. Look at the ground surrounding your shed. Does it slope toward the shed so that every rain runs down and pools against its base? If so, all your lifting will be fought against by that gathering water. Take a shovel and grade the soil so it slopes gently away from the shed on all sides, so the rain runs off and away. And look above at the roof. Does the rain pour off the roof edge and splash straight down against the base of the walls, soaking that very spot you are trying to keep dry? A simple length of gutter, or even a board fixed to divert the drip away, protects the base from the endless splash. Water that never reaches the base cannot climb it. The second thing overlooked is air. Rot cannot live where air moves freely, because moving air carries moisture away and keeps the wood dry. If your shed has no vents, the damp air inside becomes trapped, especially in the cold months, and it settles as moisture on the cold wood and the floor. Cut or buy 2 small vents, a few dollars each, one low on one wall and one high on the opposite wall. The cool air enters low, warms, rises, and leaves high, and this slow, silent current keeps the whole inside of your shed dry. Cross ventilation, the builders call it, and it costs almost nothing. My grandfather left gaps beneath the eaves of every building he made for exactly this reason. A house must breathe, he said, or it drowns in its own breath. The third thing overlooked is what you store, and how you store it, upon the floor. Do not stack your bags of soil, your boxes, your firewood, flat against the wooden floor and the walls, where they trap moisture against the wood and hide the early rot from your eyes. Keep a small gap. Set things on a low rack or a pallet so the air can pass behind and beneath them. And walk around your shed twice a year, in spring and in autumn, with your screwdriver and press it into the base here and there. Rot caught early is a small repair. Rot ignored for 5 years is a new shed. The eye that checks is the cheapest tool you own. Let me tell you now about my grandfather, because I want you to understand where all of this truly comes from. His name was Seikichi, and he was a carpenter in our village all his long life. In the years when a family built what it had with its own hands and kept it standing for generations because there was no money to build it twice. He had a saying, and he would tap the bottom of a post with his knuckle as he said it. The roof gets the glory, but the foundation keeps the house. He meant that people admire the fine roof and the strong walls, the parts they can see. But it is the humble, hidden bottom, the part in the dirt that no one praises, that decides whether a thing stands for 10 years or 100. He never once set a post into the ground without lifting it on stone and giving it a barrier and a char. And the buildings he raised that way are standing in our village still, long after he himself has gone. And my grandmother, his wife, her name was Kyo, and she kept the household accounts in a small worn book beside the door. In Japan, we call this kakebo, the household ledger, a tradition more than 100 years old, where a family writes down every coin it spends and every coin it saves, so that money is never wasted in the dark without notice. She used to say that my grandfather's stubbornness about the bottoms of posts was the finest saving in the whole book, because in 50 years she never once had to write down the cost of a rebuilt shed, a replaced floor, a new post. That long empty column, where those costs never appeared, was not nothing, my friend. It was money that stayed in the family. It was a thing built once and trusted for a lifetime. It was the quiet reward of doing the hidden work that no one sees, and that is why I speak to you today. So let us zoom out now, you and I, and look upon the whole picture together. When your shed rots from below, and you buy another, and in 10 years that one rots and you buy another still, you are not only losing the money, though the money is very real, and across the years it becomes thousands of dollars that could have stayed in your own pocket, in your own life, in the hands of the people you love. You are losing something greater. You are living inside a story someone else has written for you, a story where nothing you own is built to last, where everything must be bought again and again, where you are made to feel that decay is simply the way of things, and there is nothing to be done but to keep paying. But that is not the way of things, my friend. That is a way that was sold to you. Things built with understanding last. Every time we are made to believe that we cannot preserve what we own with our own 2 hands and a few dollars of humble material, that we must instead replace and replace and replace, a small piece of our dignity is quietly taken from us. We hardly feel it go, but it goes. Yet hear me, for the opposite is just as true and far more powerful. When you kneel down at the base of your own shed, and you lift it, and you set that barrier, and you know, standing back, that this humble building will now stand strong for another 30 years because of what your own hands have done, something is given back to you. You are capable. You are self-reliant. You are a keeper of things, not merely a buyer of them, the way your grandparents kept what they had and passed it down. And for those of us who are older now, living carefully on what we have saved across a lifetime, this is no small thing. This is the difference between watching what you own crumble and paying endlessly to replace it, and standing as the steward of a thing that lasts, between waste and dignity. This is what Matenai has always truly meant, not merely that we waste no wood and no money, but that we waste no craftsmanship, no care, no chance to make a thing endure long past ourselves with what we already hold in our own 2 hands. Your shed can outlast you. Your money can stay where it belongs. The hidden bottom, the part no one praises, can be made strong for a lifetime. You have only, all these years, been taught to look at the roof and never to look below. Now, before you go from me today, I ask just one small thing, and I tell you honestly, it would make this old man's heart glad. Down in the comments below, tell me where in the world you are writing from. What town, what state, what country you call home. I so love to see how far these old Okinawan ways will travel, from my small, quiet island all the way to your own back garden, wherever in this wide world you happen to be. And tell me this as well. When you knelt down and pressed your thumb to the bottom of your own shed, what did you find? Firm wood or soft? I would like to know how many of you caught the rot in time. I read every single one. And stay close to me, my friend. Stay close. Because in my very next lesson, I will reveal something that even the careful builders in my own village came to slowly. There is a way to keep the inside of a metal shed or a garage from dripping with water in the cold months. That strange wetness that appears on the ceiling and the walls as if from nowhere and rusts your tools and ruins your stores. It costs almost nothing, and it uses a principle my grandfather understood a lifetime before the builders gave it a name. And I promise you, I will show you exactly how. Until then, my friend, waste nothing. Matinai.